Welcome to Origin Stories. I'm RD.
I'm Parrot.
We're telling stories behind the digital art revolution
Each week we interview top artists.
and live stream with the community.
Let's go. Today is tomorrow's origin story.
Jesse Woolston, welcome to Origin Stories.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. And now, actually, that we're recording, I want to say this. So, I've been in this space for a while now, and I've actually been watching how you navigate this entire landscape, and what you're doing for artists, and then how you're approaching just promo and communication, and doing things and trying to communicate the complexities of not just blockchain, but how art and NFTs integrate with that. And I just want to say, like, on the behalf of the community, I think we can all agree that you've been really, really stellar at that communication. Like, when I've seen you talking to news stations, it's very elegant. You know how to communicate things clearly. And I wanted to say that. I want to say that at the beginning of this, and just make a note, because I appreciate it. And I love seeing people like that. And yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you, man. Well, I should cut this out and put it at the end. This is your time, Jesse.
Damn it. Okay. I tried to get you in the fast one.
I appreciate you very much. For real. I appreciate that. Thank you for leading with that. And I don't take it lightly at all. So now,
because I really believe in it, you know.
Thank you, man. But now this is the Jesse Woolston hour.
Okay.
Yes, we're digging in, and it all starts with this. Jesse, what is your origin story?
Yeah, I feel like this is it's a very daunting question, because there's a lot of complexities to this. And I feel like that's with every creator. But if I look back at my life and where I've come from and the things that I've done, and also like my environment, it actually makes a lot of sense that I'm sitting here today and doing these things. So I was born in a very small town called Lower Hutt in Wellington, New Zealand. And as I have gotten older, I've had this really deep attachment to nature. Like, it's clearly been a huge part of my life, and being around nature in a real tangible way. Like, it's a very physical approach to nature, where like I've spent countless days out in the bush, we'd call it, like a forest here, you know, and engaged in the ocean, of course, and things like that. But I also, growing up in my family, there were two sides to the aspect of my childhood, and that was a very strong technology focus, but also a highly creative focus as well. So I come from a family where we are all creative. Most of us were musicians growing up. You know, my mom still plays piano. My dad is a singer and plays guitar. But there's always this aspect of me where I loved to understand and break things down, and then try to change them or reframe them or redesign them in a way to communicate something else. So I grew up composing and writing music and painting and like shooting film and doing photography, like all these creative things. But I also love technology, so I'd always try to find new ways to use technology to articulate something new, whether that is, you know, building computers and then changing how I use them with computation or synthesizers, or anything that involved just like a brush that was non-traditional that I could use to create something new. So I've really been doing what I'm doing now my entire life. The problem that I had, and I had a lot of cognitive dissonance around this, is that when I consider art, and I'm talking strictly about my work, right? I don't want to start talking about other people's, because this is exclusive to me. When I experience art, it's not just a visual thing for me. The visual component is very instantaneous. It's like an emotional, I get it, right? But the thing that I've always found lacking about that is that you have to really take the time to feel the immersive quality of artwork, but it's very hard to stand there in front of a piece of art for an hour to really understand it, right? So with me, how I understand art is that you have this instantaneous communication through the visual component, right? But music and composition and sound actually creates that emotional immersive weight that goes with the visual component. So you have this instantaneous like connection to it, but then the emotional quality of sound and music really embeds you in what you're supposed to be feeling, right? It bridges the gap between, I see something that is pretty, with, oh, this is emotionally moving based on what I'm seeing, right? So I've had this strange relationship where I've always composed, always created, and used sound, and I have an understanding of both compositional practices as well as sound design and how waves work and things like that. but I've always done visual arts as well. And I felt like I couldn't do both for a long time, man. Like I've done most of it out of rebellion, to be honest, where I've looked at this thing and I'm like, visual art is never complete unless it has sound, and sound is never complete unless it has a visual component, right?
So if I could jump in for one moment, the burning question on my mind is, what comes more naturally to you? If there's an answer there, is it looking at a visual and matching sound, or is it hearing a sound and coming up with a visual?
It's kind of strange to see, because I would love to have a very straightforward answer. It's both. You know, and that's why, like, I worked in film composition for a long time, because I would hear a piece of music and go, I know exactly what that looks like. Or I would see a piece of visual art and go, oh, I know the exact theme or emotional context that this piece should have in order to feel what I'm seeing, right? It's always been this duality that actually works in cohesion between the two forms. And that's why I mean, that's why, first of all, I love film composition, because it's all about storytelling, both in the dimension of visual arts as well as auditory arts and sound. But I love blending both because it feels much more complete to me when you have both sides, you know? And that's something that is, it's funny, man. Like, I love how you get into determinism with this, which is kind of fun, but I love how you think you know who you are in your mind, right? But your actions are really the only things that actually truly matter. So I've gone most of my life thinking, oh, I'm just a composer, right? Even though I've been building installations for the last decade and doing visual arts since I was a child. But being like, no, I'm one-dimensional, because of the fact that my interactions with the world were very much so focus on one thing. That is how you can maximize your ability. And I actually, we can jump back, but I think I would love to talk about this thing that happened to me. I had a very strange moment just over a year ago, actually, right before the pandemic. So throughout I'm 29 now. Okay, so throughout my 20s, I've been building installations, working with visual arts, you know, all with technology and creative forms, right? But I've also been working in film, of course. Like the last film that I worked on, now I'm not doing that anymore, was a short film, documentary short film for the United Nations. That was all about a Syrian refugee fighter, and that was shown to children who got separated from their families that were refugees. And there's a whole other conversation there where I love articulating humanity whenever I can, because I think humanity is this beautiful dynamic between positive and negative emotion, and you can't have one or the other. Like, there needs to be a combination of both. And even in music, like, I know I'm going on a tangent, but like,
go with it.
Claire de Lune by Debussy, the reason why we love that piece is not because of the fact that it has a specific emotion. It actually doesn't. It's this dichotomy and this dualism between a major and a minor introduction to the work. We feel like we're floating because we have that dynamic, and we get this like huge uplift after the introductory section of that piece. And the reason why we have that is because you have this sad, happy, and then it moves into the happy side of the piece, and you understand that, and it feels that way because you have the grounding in the context of this sadness. So for me, it's like I love this dynamic of articulating an emotion that is pure, based on the fact that we as beings, and I would say the greater universe, is this idea that there is good things and bad things, positive, negative, chaos, and control. And it's about using both of those things and articulating both of those things through art that I love. It's the communication that is human on the backpack of technology and creativity, right? I want to show you something new about the beautiful components of our universe, or how we function in relation to our universe, right? But have a really, really strong emotional way. So when you feel this, and you have an attachment to it, because it's not just a straightforward idea, it's an emotional attachment. So you feel like this is intrinsic to humanity and to you as a being, right? But then it's like, wow, this is actually thought-provoking, because it's something that I haven't seen or understood before. So I'm using those two in marriage, where I'm really trying to articulate the emotional quality it means to experience things, but also have that element of, wow, I didn't see it like that. I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. And that's something that part of the reason why I make art, and what I'm trying to do is understand these things, right? Emotional and the practical, like science, understand, you know, universal laws, things like that. And then when I articulate them, I'm hunting for the spark, the light in people, right?
Mhm.
Where like I can show this thing that I'm doing and there's this emotional weight, whatever. And when you experience it, you go, oh, that little reaction, that's like, oh, that was something new, right? And that connects to me deeply about me wanting to communicate and just really bring people an experience that they didn't know before, you know?
So how do you ground that, right? These are grand macro ideas, that juxtaposition and wanting to work with that interplay. But how do you end up grounding that in the micro, in choosing a piece, in choosing something to represent that maybe has those overarching themes to it, but now brings it forth to the viewer?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that's I mean, every artist has the hits and paths, right? But also there's some form of gravity that needs to be injected into the work. So I look at the beginning of by the way, art to me and my work, it's immaterial. I honestly don't really care about the artwork. I care about why it exists. Mm-hmm. Why am I creating something? Why am I trying to convey a certain message? Why do I need an emotional weight, right? These are the questions I always start with. And I love trying to understand, once again, the universe, then also how we as beings understand the universe, interface with the universe, right? I'm trying to understand those two components. So it starts with, okay, I want to say something. What am I trying to say here? Well, what I love doing is I love looking to nature because that's the root of who I am. I'm very much detached and connected to nature and how we experience nature and how we understand nature. So I always look to the sciences and I look at like, all right, what kind of idea, what kind of law, what kind of concept do I want to articulate that's embedded in the universe, right? And then I go, okay, if I want to articulate something new to people through art, I need to understand, of course, what on earth I'm doing, and then figure out what is the best method to articulate that, okay? And then build everything around it. Because intentionality also is a huge thing. Like I have an internal dialogue where intentionality rules everything around me. It's not cash, right? It's this idea of thinking, okay, every component in this piece needs to have a reason to exist and point at a very specific concept to articulate the point of the work. So I start there. I go like, all right, what am I trying to say? How am I trying to articulate these things that I want to show people? As an example, my Genesis NFT was all about how our physiology functions along the electromagnetic spectrum. So like how we interpret, light and color, and then also how we understand that through sound and composition. So that idea of like understanding, okay, I have a very strong concept, and then building everything out from there, right? That's really it. But it all needs to serve the entire point of the artwork, which is articulating something that we all know, we have instincts towards, but in a new way to understand what you're actually looking at, right? That's it.
So on the nature of light, right? Super rare, the Jesse Woolston NFT Genesis. So I want to dive all the way into that piece because, as you know, it grabbed me, pulled me all the way through and in. And
thank you for bidding, by the way. Like that was so amazing to have RD in it. I was like, my guy.
We came up just shy. We'll get to that in a second. Here, let's hold that as a bit of a cliffhanger teaser because I do want to break down that artwork, and you did an amazing job sharing the process behind it. So I would like to pull that apart a bit. But let's take a step back. Let's take a step back. You were hovering around the NFT space, observing, engaging far before the release of that piece. So take us through, how did you find NFTs?
Yeah, I mean, so I've known about crypto, like I feel like a lot of us have been on the outer edges of crypto for a long time, if not involved in crypto. So back in 2013, I was day trading in Bitcoin, actually. And then I lost it all. So that was great. Thanks to Mt. Gox, which is, I feel like you're crypto official when you lose everything at least once.
Yeah. Usually not always. Well, but usually not always when the phrase day trading is used, it's immediately followed with lost everything, at least like the first iteration. But it sounds like, was yours because of the day trading itself or because of Mt. Gox?
It was Mt. Gox.
All right. So you were doing well, or you were.
I mean, I was doing okay. I was actually
working.
I was working in corporate IT at the time. Like, I was very corporate IT at the time. Like, that's also a whole nother story. Yeah. Like, I was working for the biggest telecommunications company in Oceania at 18, working with executives. And I was like, this is killing my soul. You know, like, so it was like, so that's a good testament to be like, just because you're good at something does not mean you should do it. Right.
Well said. Yep.
You know, it's that component. But yeah, so I was hovering around NFTs for, I initially heard about them through actually Jay and Silva and Ryan Thank You X. So I was looking at NFTs and crypto for a while, a little bit before then, but I didn't really kind of get it. I didn't really pay attention until I saw that. And then of course you have your Beeple and whatnot. And I was like, wow, this is an expression of this technology in an amazing way, where it also falls in line with the idea that artists are usually the ones in society that go off and break new ground, right? Yes. And they're the crazy ones, which is hilarious, right? Where it's like art is the mechanism to break new ground, show new things, and then on the backpack of that, integrate those processes into greater society. And it was funny. I wrote Jay in on Instagram after I saw his release. That this was like December.
December. It was their first week. It was actually December 31st.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah, you're good with dates. Good on you. Yeah, I wrote him. I was like, dude, this is amazing. Congrats. Like, I love to see artists win. Like, it's something that is very deep for me, because if you look at history, it's always been very difficult to monetize work, and whether or not you are good or not. And a lot of the time, patronage is the only way to do it. That's why we have the church that did a lot of that. But no, I wrote Jay in, and he was like, dude, oh my gosh, I've known your work for ages. What on earth? Let's come on, let's get you an animus. Let's start moving. And it was just a rocket ship from there. And then Dave Krugman found out about my work. And honestly, these people are they're beautiful people. They're beautiful people. The fact that they are interested in going out of their way to talk about somebody else's work. And at the time, I didn't even know them. Like, what would happen was I would be on Clubhouse for a little bit because I was interested in learning about NFTs. And Dave would be like, hey, come into this room. He would invite me, talk about me. And then he would go to the next room, pull me in again, and just kept going down the line. And I was like it's the most incredible thing to have people that truly love what you're doing and then have the fortitude to do that, I mean,
those three individuals that you mentioned, Jay and Silva, right? Ryan, Thank You X, and Dave Krugman. I mean, all have been on Origin Stories. I'm huge fans of all three of them, consider them all friends. Like, and you're right, like their spirits to constantly embrace good people, great artwork, and just naturally, as if it's breathing fresh air, just fold everybody in and look to grow together. It's unique, and they all share it.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's beautiful. Yeah, like I love to use that term because it truly is. It's like, it's something that is captivating in multiple dimensions, where you're like, in terms of just the fact that you're willing to do this and take your time is amazing. Also, you're great personalities, and also you're an artist, so you understand what it's like, and I met Ryan a bit later, like, and like, he's amazing. But yeah, like, just having those people there to really kind of embrace you is a beautiful feeling. Like, when I came into the Animus Lounge, everyone was like, oh my gosh, we already know you. And I'm like, what? Like, just to be like, wow, these people, that's incredible, and from there, it's just been a beautiful experience of just like meeting incredible people that also feel the same way. And I feel like it's because of the fact that we all understand that this is new and we're building together, that there's no hierarchies in terms of artist status. As in, what I mean by that is, like, I've developed relationships and become friends with so many incredible artists that I'm like, I've known about you my whole life, and you're amazing. You know what I mean? And like, now we're friends. Interesting, right? Where it's like, it enables the opportunity to develop those relationships and have those things happen, which is absolutely incredible. And that's why, like, in New York, it felt very organic and like, oh, we're just homies meeting each other, and I love that. It was very, very cool. So
you meet these individuals and many others, right? You jump into Animus, jump into these clubhouses, and just start engaging with the broader NFT space. Starts in December, walk it forward into 2021, and then ultimately walk it forward to making the decision It's my time.
Yeah, well, okay, then I should prefix this story. It's kind of, I feel so fortunate, RD. Like there's so many, I feel so lucky that there's been pivotal people in my life that have come almost at the perfect time, right? Where you're like, I don't know what it is. It's like, it's a beautiful thing. Like when I was young, when I was a teenager, I committed myself. I'm like, I don't care what it takes. I don't care how painful it will be. I'm going to commit myself fully as everything I am to the pursuit of understanding the universe, how we as beings understand that, and then also understanding emotion and through sound and music, where it's still like it's feeling, so it's different. But trying to just get as many tools as I can so that I can articulate the beautiful things that I find, right? So what happened was I had these parts, right? I had this opportunity to go off and work in film composition and a little bit of a Hollywood kind of arena. And I also had this, once again, this cognitive dissonance where I was like, I want to make art, like art is it, but like this makes sense. And I had a couple, I asked some advice to a few people that were very successful in composition and had a couple meetings, went to some studios, and every single person that I talked to was like, focus on one thing, right? I understand, like when I'd show them the work and I'd be like, hey, like this is what I'm doing with the sound and it's articulating the specific visual thing and this concept. And every answer was like, do one thing, right? And that bothered me for honestly for years, man, where like I felt this inability of being seen by the world, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, if I do one thing, then that's it, that'll be fine. But I can't really do that, and I had an opportunity at the beginning of the like right before the pandemic, the March, right, that period, to build an installation at the Museum of Moving Image in New York. And what the installation was we had robotics that played instruments, okay, and then all of that sound and that music and the vibrations and the waves were then converted to a signal source that went out to the audience. And the audience was made up of the majority of the deaf community, okay? And what we built is we built these haptic suits that had 23 different points all over the body, right? So that when these people heard the music, as in didn't hear it, they felt it because they didn't have traditional hearing. When they experienced the music, they felt it all over their bodies and it communicated through vibration that way. So is this opportunity to redefine and re-articulate how we understand sound. And it was really beautiful because the deaf community, they had an opportunity to experience something that was made for them, first of all, right? But actually the people with traditional hearing, they completely were like, I don't even understand sound anymore. This is completely reframed and re-articulated what I think and how this functions, right? And I was like, this is what it means to be alive, man, where I can create something like that and watch people's faces and just see that light, that spark appear when they hear it for the first time and feel it for the first time, right? There's two sides. And what was interesting after that, I actually was invited to Ithaca, up to Cornell, where I spent the day with the Carl Sagan Institute and the astrophysicist there. And Dr. Lisa Carlton-Ager, like, I love her, she's amazing. But we throughout the whole day, I was basically there to see if we could build an installation using the exoplanet dataset, which is, by the way, like, this is what I mean by like, this is what lights me on fire. These brilliant people have figured out that there's more than 4,000 planets that we can live on one day, purely based on the Goldilocks zone. And it's like, that to me it's incredible. And I'm like, oh, it's so cool. So I had this opportunity to sit in Carl Sagan's office, speak with Lisa, attend talks, go around Cornell. And part of our conversations then, I brought this up because I see her and she's a brilliant, brilliant woman. And she is someone that I identify more with because of the fact that she has a background doing multiple different things, right? Besides just being brilliant. And I talked to her and she was like, you know what? What's funny about that argument is that usually the people that can come up with really interesting abstract ideas are the ones that aren't one-dimensional. And that was, I'm paraphrasing, and it was a little bit like that. And it wasn't so direct, and it also doesn't apply to anyone else. I think it strictly applies to me, because we were having a conversation and I was like, hey, what do you think I should do? So that was directed purely at me and nobody else. Okay, I want to make that clear. And that kind of changed everything for me. After the experience, man, like I was like, I got home and I was like, nah, I just need to embrace who I am and what I do and what I feel and what truly lights me on fire. And then ever since that, and then I basically had this period where I was like, all right, I'm going to crunch in. I'm going to really understand how to articulate nature through physics simulations specifically, and installations and things like that. And it was game over. And then, the pandemic came around, and there's a bittersweet moment there where it was very, very hard for all of us, but it actually created an environment for me to hone in and focus entirely on that, where I was like, okay, I'm going to adapt my film scoring abilities, where it's music that articulates specific concepts or emotions. And I'm going to use what I've been doing for the past decade, which is building these installations with sound and music, and really like stop, figure out exactly what I need to do and what I love, and then run with that. And then you have NFTs show up, which is, hello, this is incredible, But what I think about the beauty of the NFT space is that I see it as a new dimension to the artist. Like it's another string or hair to the bow. It's a paintbrush. It's an additional paintbrush. And I have a huge amount of respect for what this actually means based on history, right? So for me, I'm thinking this is a beautiful opportunity to start an entire new dimension in the course of my life, which I'll be working in until I leave this earth. And I was thinking, okay, in that case, I need to have a huge amount of respect for this. And I need to make sure when I'm creating an NFT at this stage of my life, it needs to feel like it's its own thing. And it's like you have visuals, you have music, you have NFTs. It needs to be its own dimension to what I'm trying to do. And that's why it took so long. It's like, okay, I want to take my time so that I'm not caught up with the hype of the space. That's another big thing. I want to take my time to really understand how this works. Then also when I go to create, it needs to be highly intentional and thorough and thought out based on what I want to create and how I want to approach my involvement in the NFT space, right? So it's like all these things lined up based on the prefix of that experience at Cornell and that installation, where I was like, nah, there's nothing else. This is it, So that's where I'm at now. And what I want to do with NFTs is I specifically look at it where this is a beautiful opportunity to leverage the NFTs to create experiences for people, right? Like my ultimate goal is I don't want to be an NFT artist. I want to use NFTs as part of my practice as a way to create experiences for people that engages something a bit larger than the NFT itself. Like long term, I want to build installations that are experiential and then have an NFT component, and that NFT component allows all kinds of different things and changes how you engage with the installation. So yeah, it was really just taking my time and being thorough and intentional and thought out, right? And then really creating something that speaks to what it means to be human and how we understand the universe,
So take us to then On the Nature of Light. Let's go into it now. And by the way, just taking a step back, I personally appreciate your mindset so much. Having the presence of mind to be patient right from the jump, even as you look left, you look right, you can find a lot of chaos in the space and a lot of productive chaos too, and some on the other side, of course. But the fact that you were able to, in a sense, put that at arm's length and really think through your own journey and how NFTs might fit into it, and then how you could elevate the medium or use the medium to elevate your art. That's fascinating to me. I think that's something that, in my opinion, will pay off dramatically in a year, 2, 3, 4 years as this whole thing continues to play out and the medium advances.
Yeah, and that's something I'm banking on, because like at the end of the day, RD, man, like once again, the art is a material in a way, because what I'm actually doing is I'm creating work for human beings. I'm creating work for me and other people. I'm not creating work for tech, for hype, for anything other than, at the end of the day, all I care about is creating something, and then if I communicate it well, which is a lifelong pursuit, the viewer goes, oh wow, that's all I care about, right? So for me, it made total sense, where it's like, if I'm going to be detached to everything other than that, I don't care if ETH goes up 10,000 times, percent, or drops to the bottom of the ocean. Like it doesn't really, yeah, like all I care about is how can I make great art and then support the space in my community, and also like see if I can help other people. That's it. Because it's, at the end of the day, it's about humans. It's not about anything else, in my mind at least. So that was that detachment, that was that patience.
And so how is that then birthed in your first piece?
Yeah, so the piece is all about how we perceive nature and the colors in nature, right? So first of all, I was like, okay, I want to articulate this idea that nature has a complex variations of colors, and we can see like 10 million colors, by the way. So like we're evolved dramatically to experience visually and auditory in an incredible way these qualities in nature. So I was looking at, okay, I want to break down and almost distill down and simplify all these complex variations of colors and how we understand color in nature. Okay, so the first thing was like, okay, I first of all need to look at the evolutionary process of our physiology, right? So I need to understand the electromagnetic spectrum, and I need to understand how we perceive color through the visible light spectrum, and the absorption of waves, and the dominant wavelengths left over that produce the specific colors that you're experiencing. And then from there, it's like, okay, sound is also waves. It's in a different categorization along the spectrum, but we perceive sound purely through waves and vibration. And also, oh, this is fun actually, by the way. The old adage, if a tree falls in the forest, like, do you hear it? Well, it's something like that, right?
Yeah, my wife, by the way, hates that phrase. Sorry, just throwing that back at you.
Okay, that's amazing. But yeah, no, because the thing is that it's all about the perception. So your tools and your ears are designed to perceive sound. So if a tree falls in the forest and you're there, you will hear it because it's your perception and your tools working. If you're not there, it still emits that vibration, but because you're not there to hear it, you don't hear it based on your personal experience. So sound is really cool. Sound is purely based on your perceptions of you being in proximity to the sound waves that are emitted from a certain thing.
So does that tree that is far, far, far away, does it need an observer effect to make the actual sound?
For you, it does. For your personal experience, you need to observe it to understand the sound, but it still emits the vibration in the waves, which is also like, and this is also within the human dynamic range too. So what's fascinating is if you look at elephants, they actually communicate through frequencies that are below our ability to hear. So they communicate through the ground through very slow moving vibrations. So by the way, like when you're chugging around in Africa, these elephants are talking and you're like, oh, look, it's so pretty, like, so, anyway, so I keep going on tangents. But no, yeah, so the piece was all about how we understand color in nature. And what I did was I looked at like, okay, I want to work with some biomes, clearly, like these are elements found on Earth and environments found on Earth. And then I want to articulate those in a way that is art-centric, but also tries to have I wanted to have a less of my paintbrush, less of my hand of an artist in terms of how I'm understanding and articulating these things. So the process was to take these biomes and then using AI and ML, convert all of the complex variations of colors into like a simplified form that has less of my hand, where, because I'm going to be human, I'm going to go like, that's pretty, I'm going to use that, and that's pretty, and I'm going to use that, and that gets away from the point of the work. So distilling and simplifying all of these color palettes down using machine, and then re-articulating those through sculpture and then environmental design. And the central sculpture intentionally using turbulence and everything based on fluid dynamics to articulate and then also show how these colors can mix, compare, and contrast. And that was that visual side. So it moves through different biomes and environments and shows you in the center a distilled down version of these colors. And what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, nature and art, everything comes from nature. Like this bridge and how you understand colors, like even the artworks behind you, Adi, all of this is informed by how we perceive reality, which is fascinating, right? And then from there, I was like, okay, well, that's only half the angle, right? Like if me is saying to you today that I'm like, my work is not complete without sound, I have to actually do something that is grounded in the concept and the point of this artwork in the first place. So what I did was I looked.
Wait, before you go to the sound side, right?
Okay.
So I'm super curious this, because again, just going back to it, it's the artwork really did captivate me. And I told you this, but I was bidding on that artwork all the way up until having to leave for a friend's wedding. And
that's right. I was amazed. You're such a legend.
I walked out the door having placed what I knew would have to be my last volley, which turned out to be a second place finisher. But I knew I was walking out the door. And by the time I believe by the time that we got to the car to show you how fast it happened, I already knew.
Oh,
I already knew it was over. But another aspect of the artwork that I'm so fascinated by, you sharing pieces of that process on Twitter and throughout, and then hearing you talk about it now, representing those biomes and flowing through those biomes, you create a natural sculpture, right? Can you go a little bit into that? And again, I'm totally respectful. Some stuff is better left to the observer, but I was always curious about, how do you decide to represent the biomes in that sculpture, right? And sort of place it and size it, right? So you have these two framings going on. You have for example, if that artwork was up on the wall behind me on this digital frame, you'd have the frame itself, but you'd have the frame of the sculpture within that. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually a fun topic, Adi. This goes back to what I was telling you about, right? Where it's the human experience is positive and negative emotion. Mm-hmm. And honestly, if you look at human beings, all we're trying to do is negate negative emotion. That's all we're trying to do. Like we build technology, we do things. It's really purely about trying to mitigate the pain, which is like, and pain is a journalistic sense, right? It's whether physical pain or like, hey, I'm sad because I am in the middle of the desert right now and I need water, right? So like, there's this concept here. And what I found is that because of my attachment to nature and how I've been interacting with nature, to me, nature is both beautiful, but absolutely terrifying. So for me, I'm trying to capture the terrifying awe of what it means to interact and understand the world around us. Right? Like that, it's a very, very scary, but it's an intriguing thing to think about. So when I approach representing nature, I am not trying to shy away from the fact that this is terrifying, this is scary to me, but it's also beautiful. And I think we intrinsically as human beings, we find that power almost beautiful in its own way, where we have respect for it. We're like, wow, we really are. Like, look at the night sky, man. Like, we're tiny. And that's a very freeing thing, but also a very captivating thing, but also a very terrifying thing. It's a cocktail of emotions, right? So when I'm creating work, I am trying to capture that. I'm trying to capture the substance of what it means to understand nature in its pure way. I am not trying to shy away from or try to distill it in a way where it feels like, oh, this is comfortable. I want it to, in a way, subvertly and terrify you a little bit, which is kind of it's hard for me to say that because it feels wrong. It feels kind of cruel, right? But it's because I have such respect for nature where I'm really trying to represent it in its true form. And my experience throughout my life has been that dichotomy of this is beautiful and oh my gosh, I could drown. I better get out of this current, right? So the sculpture is about that.
It feels less cruel. Like it sounds less cruel to me and more honest, right? Actually,
I thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's really what it is, man.
Because I appreciate that there's such an art to what you're describing, which is almost, it's like you become the vessel, right? But you're trying to remove yourself from it. You're trying not to bias the artwork with too many of your decisions as to what's beautiful and what's not. And I really enjoy hearing you talk about it like that, because I do think there are many forms of art that lead with what the artist finds attractive, right? And is better for it in those ways. And then there are these unique forms of artwork, like the one that you're describing, which you're actually trying to do the opposite, is take yourself out of the equation and purely convey it and communicate it.
100%. I'm so glad you get that, man, because that's at the end of the day, that's all I care about. It's, once again, like, the art doesn't matter. It's purely how I could show you something that you're not thinking about, right? And create an emotional way. That's why I always try to detach myself, right? Because everything serves the concept. Everything serves the reason for it to exist. Everything does, in every capacity. And the only thing I'm doing is I'm trying to work as hard as I can in an obsessive way throughout my entire life to be the best I can at doing that. Like, I want to work so hard that you don't even notice it's me. You don't even know it's me. I want to work so hard that you look at that and you don't think of me. You think of the point and why it exists. That's all I care about. Because I've made art that is very much like, oh, I feel this way, you know, like that stuff, and that's fine. But for me, it doesn't have substance to me when in terms of my work. It doesn't have that gravitas of like, this is something compelling and new and different and also familiar and also terrifying and also beautiful, right? It's this concoction of these different things that I find compelling, man. And it's, yeah, at the end of the day, that's all I'm trying to do. Like, it's really all I'm trying to do, you know?
All right. Now, how does sound factor in?
Okay, yeah. Oh, also, by the way, so the whole point of the structure and the arrangement is almost like you're appearing in these biomes, you're standing in front of it, and this giant monolith appears in front of you, and you're like, whew, okay. So like, that's it. Okay, so with sound, once again, this goes back to like, all right, sound needs to articulate the point of the artwork, right? And it needs to show someone or the viewer something a bit different than what they've understood. The problem that I find with sound, and I guess art in a way as well, is this: I'm trying to detach myself as much as I can, right? But I also have this dichotomy where if I detach myself fully, I can create work that gets lost in translation based on the fact that I'm not considering the emotional qualities of the work, right? So like, and this happens a lot with art, and it's fine, you know, but it does happen a lot with art where, especially with sound, and I've experienced a lot of art over the years, and I hope to experience so much more, where sound is often a second thought, and it usually can be very, how do I say this, reasonably grotesque in the art world, right? Where it's like, okay, I like the concept of the sound and the music, but it doesn't consider the fact that if I hear a minor second constantly, it's going to do my head in. Right? Like, I want to hear balance. I want to hear emotion and progression. And I want to be told a story, and I want to feel like the composer and the sound is taking me on a journey that's considering how I feel. That's also part of the visual art. So what I was stuck with, as I was stuck with this concept of like, all right, it needs to feel emotional and be grounded in how we interpret sound and music and consonance and dissonance and yada, 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 but it also has to be embedded in the science, because that's the whole point of the work. So what I did was I was like, okay, the score needs to work and convey this idea of colors, right? That's because that's what I'm trying to convey. So I looked at like, I was like, all right, so the central sculpture is going to be the dictator for this. I'm going to look at like, how does color stack on that central sculpture, right? Whether it's, you know, pick your color. And then I'm going to take those wavelengths and I'm going to convert them to the audible frequency spectrum. So once again, you have this electromagnetic spectrum. You have like on the far right, you have like gamma rays and radiation and the scary stuff. Then you have like the visible light spectrum in the middle, and you have infrared and things like that. And then you have the audible spectrum at the bottom. And this is our evolution in terms of how we perceive wavelengths and things around us. So I converted those wavelengths. And then what I did was I was like, all right, I have a bunch of these pitches. And when I say pitch, I mean specific speeds of those waveforms. So I'm actually thinking outside of our entire paradigm with sound and music. This is not considering anything that we've ever kind of thought about, right? And what I actually went back to, I went back to the Pythagoreans. You know, and Pythagoras is a crazy person, but also brilliant, by the way. So it's always the crazy ones that end up doing interesting things. And I looked at like how they considered sound in terms of mathematics, whereas like wavelengths, and then everything was built off the speed of those wavelengths, right? And they built a lot of their intervals that way. So you have that, and then you have, of course, like the Romans and everybody else, and you get religion into the spectrum, and then you have all of this interpretation, and then you have Western scales now, right? So I looked at like, all right, how did they use math to understand intervals, and how did they approach it before they put it in the context of music, right? So I was looking at like sets and things like that. So basically what I did was I was like, all right, I'm taking these pictures and I'm going to lay them out across the entire audible spectrum that we have. And what I mean by that is low sounds and then really, really high sounds, right? We have this range. And what was funny is I figured out the math was right, where if I duplicated, or sorry, doubled up the wavelengths across the spectrum, and then I looked at how we interpret wavelengths based on scales, it was the same pitch across the entire spectrum based on octaves. So you'd have like a G in the bass and a G all the way at the top. And I was like, oh, I did it right. So that was the cool part where I was like, all right, I need to contextualize these wavelengths in something that we understand. Okay. So I built my own musical scale purely based on the categorization of these wavelengths. And that was the like emotional, like, we understand this music side of things. But then I took the raw actual waves and the pitches that were generated from those waves, and I married the two together. Because if I had just the waves, it sounds horrible, by the way. Like I listened to it, I'm like, oh, this is so bad. But I was like, it has to be embedded in this, but also have that emotional quality. So I looked at these two sides, how we contextualize and understand pitches and then scales and then music, and then also how do we actually understand these raw fundamental waves. And I married those together. And that's why when you listen to the score, you get it. It's kind of a bit abrasive, but like it's a balance, right? Like you're like, okay, this feels like, you know, something that would be kind of related to traditional music, quote unquote, right? But it has this quality of like, what are these like dissonances? What are these like pitches? And that's the combination of both. And I specifically use strings as a way to also, that's once again the Greeks, but in a way that was really easy to control what was happening. And then I did like, this goes kind of deep. Like I looked at the harmonic series that was produced by the waves, and like it's all this more like, oh, you know, there's a lot of I don't really go outside much. You know? No, so like
that's the line of the interview so far. Just I love that it all went there.
That's the one. So, I mean, once again, this articulates my obsessive nature of really trying to understand and articulate these things, right? Like I love this stuff. It's, man, like it's so incredibly captivating and beautiful. But okay, but then like I
real quick, hearing you describe that is fulfilling in the sense that, you know, I see there's a lot of artwork out there in the NFT space, right? And it's amazing exploring. There's always something new to find. And I think everyone has their own relationships where some artwork is scrolled through, you know, barely even seen. It just is like gone off the screen. And then some of it's like, oh, that's interesting, but then you're gone. And then some of it's, oh, let me take a second look at that. And then sometimes it's a triple take. And then sometimes it's let me click through, expand this screen, strap on the headphones and get in there and immerse yourself. And so for me, this artwork fell on that side of the spectrum, probably one of the artworks that I spent the most time with. So it's incredibly fulfilling to me to hear how deep you went with it, because I have to say, I'm nodding along with when you're saying, you know, the sound is a bit abrasive. I'm nodding, because that the first pass of the sound purely, I can tell you, it's not, you know, it's not traditional music in the sense that, oh, you're immediately like nodding along, but it was interesting. And that was what did it for me. It pulled me in. Wow. It made me want to listen to it again. And again, it had a quality to it that, as I'm listening to you describe it and the efforts that went into it and how you married, I forget exactly how you described it, right? But you had the pure wavelengths, right? That didn't necessarily sound great on their own, but you found a way to bring in, right, the other side to it, intertwine those things. And so, yes, you had something that both didn't push me all the way away, but gave me that curiosity to dive deeper and listen to it 27 some odd times.
Wow, that's incredible. And that means I did my job, because that was a balance. It needed to be a balance too, because I once again, like, I have to understand that, you know, we're people, we're going to be listening to this. So it needs to, it's like, I really take the time to understand who's going to be experiencing the work, right? And I love that, because to me, it's all communication. Like, I need to purely understand how to communicate what I'm trying to do in a way where I'm like, I know if I do this first and I set up your ear in this way, when I play this note, it's going to feel resolved and you're going to get a sense of tension and resolution, right? So for me, it was really important to strike that balance. And then also, like, see how I can combine as much as I can to really articulate what was going on. So like, even the point where I built the dynamics of the sound. And what I mean by that is how it's played, the intonation, right? Because I'm using strings. So it feels like waves, first of all. It's a hint at, and of course, the purpose of the piece. And by the way, another thought, once again, another tangent. All the pitches that you hear fall exactly in line with the sculpture in terms of the color stack as well. So it's very much sound and the visuals all align with colors like that. So what I did was I also built the sound, the score in a way where, because it feels like it's waves that are moving, I halfway through the piece, because part of the piece that I liked was this idea of looking at time in a not so linear way, forwards and backwards, a little bit of a metaphysical idea. And what I did was is I built the music so that you could play it forwards and backwards, and it sounds similar, if not the same, right? Because of purely that intonation and how I crafted the waves, right? The sounds and how the characteristics of it was built. So for me, the part of the subset of art there is that you can play the piece backwards and forwards and it will just act as its own, right? And it's like, I love these ideas. It's not just the things that are the laws of the universe and how we understand laws of the universe. It's actually how we perceive these laws, right? Like, how do we actually perceive the world around us? And that's why, like, Descartes was huge for me with dualism. That's what really got me going. Well, there's this difference in, in his writings, that there's a difference between the, res extensa and cogitan, where it's like your perceptions of reality, and then the reality is different, right? Purely because, once again, like the tree, it's your perception of what's happening that is your world. That's your entire existence. That's why, like, I have a fun time with a thought experiment where you're uniquely experiencing life, but we're all doing it together. But I will never understand what it's truly like to be you, right? And vice versa. And I think that's fascinating, But anyway, another tangent. Yeah. So like the music was all about articulating the point of the work, and then also what you're visually seeing, in an emotional but also a grounded way. Like, the one thing for me is, I like to think about these things, right? Like the perceptions of reality, like modes of being, things like that. But at the end of the day, it still needs to feel grounded in reality, right? I'm not someone that has a leaning towards that kind of, like, potentially psychedelia in a way. It's more that, like, I love the sciences. I love understanding how the universe functions, and then I love articulating it through art. It's really what it was about. Yeah. So that was fun.
And that leads us to the doorstep of your second volley in the NFT space, which is upon us. It is here. It is ready. So what can you tell us?
Well, I'm actually really excited about this one, because I took a step back and I was thinking, okay, like, how do I articulate what I'm trying to create, and what shall I do here? Especially because I understood that it's going to be on a monolith, right? And I always consider with my work how it's going to be experienced, and I really, really take the time there, because I understand that, like, context is everything, man. Like, the reason why you go to an art museum, when you walk in the door of the art museum, you're in a way, like, you're conditioned in a way to be like, I'm going to experience something interesting, so I'm going to start to lean towards that perception and that understanding, right? Just like, for instance, I'm talking to you right now, and I'm open, and I love this conversation, right? But if I go to Thanksgiving with people I don't know or whatever, it would be harder for me to, well, maybe not actually, but it'll be more difficult for me to get to this point, right? So the new work, it's all about the universal laws of turbulent flow, but more importantly, how gravity fronts and high and low pressure currents and high and low pressure fronts functions in the universe. So what I'm doing is I've combined the behaviors of maelstroms, storms, tornadoes, and black holes in a way to articulate almost like a universal flow of how all of these laws coexist at the same time. Where if you look at just something like turbulent flow, it's a beautiful natural law where when you make coffee in the morning, fluid behaves the same way, and also it's on the surface of the sun, and it's like, and the ocean, of course, and things like that. It's like there's all these different behaviors that are the same in a micro and a macro way, right? It's cosmic, but it's also very much so, oh, it's a cigarette, right? So for me, I love articulating this concept of, I want to show you behavior that is across our universe and mix all of these things together in a way that's grounded in computation and physics simulation. So I built a piece that when you see it, it has remnants of a black hole. It has, in terms of like gravity and force, and then it has remnants of high and low pressure fronts and how they interact with each other based on speed. And then how a tornado or a storm can form and how the behavior of matter can form around that. And then a maelstrom and how different currents interact with each other and create that maelstrom. And it's on and what got me going actually was interesting. There's the University of Nottingham. They have built a black hole simulator based on this idea in fluid dynamics of maelstroms. And it's absolutely, it's so cool. Like how they set up like propagation waves and things like that. It's amazing. But this concept is what got me going, where I was like, I've always loved the scalability of the universal laws that we understand and we instinctually know. Right, we have this feeling that when we look at things and clouds and whatnot, we all know what it looks like. But are we thinking about how these forces work? So I have this art piece that involves all of that, and also goes into the colors of this difference between the cosmic and also nature, where the work starts off where you're like, okay, I understand what's happening, and I've generated all the color palettes based on nature. So you have all of the things that you'll experience if you went outside. But halfway through, the piece transitions into a cosmic scale color palette, right? So it goes from these like greens and like lighter colors and things like that, and these yellows to blacks and purple and red and things like that. You get this difference of, wow, there's what I experience, but also this intensity that comes with this new color palette. And in the center, you have this black hole, right? That pulls you in, and it's interesting because I'm trying to, every step of the way, I'm trying to inject all of these natural laws. So even with a camera movement, like it's also funny. I've had this dream my whole life, by the way, where I wake up and I'm in an astronaut suit and I'm in front of a black hole, and it freaks me out every time, right? And it starts off in third person, where you're looking at me, look at the black hole, and all you see is this giant event horizon with black and the photon ring and then accretion disk around it, and it's massive. And then the dream is me slowly falling into this black hole, and it happens every time. The last shot is me turning around, looking back, and watching space-time warp around me based on the fact that a black hole kind of sits about gravity in a plane, and I see everything close around me, and it's terrifying. Like I don't know why I have it. It's just terrifying. So for me, it's like it's me using that emotion. I'm using that emotional weight as a guide. That dream is telling me that I need to build this piece where it kind of feels a bit scary, right? Which is why the center is black, and you actually fall into it. So what I'm doing is I'm emulating subcritical, critical, and supercritical flow, which is basically like what happens with these universal laws is that you have, and like if you think about a black hole, actually, I'll try to like articulate it in a way that's simple. And this also goes into like, do you remember Interstellar? Like,
yeah,
Gargantuan, amazing. How they use the black hole's gravitational pull to like launch them, right? So that's an idea of, you have this pull, right? But you can still resist that pull and use it as a tool or whatever, like they did in Interstellar. That's an idea of subcritical, right? But as you get into these new stages, the force of what's happening, in this case, gravity, is so much so that you can't resist it or go back. So there's a point of no return, which is terrifying. So this subcritical idea, subcritical flow, is this point where the pull is so strong that you can't go backwards against it, and you can only go downstream, right? And I'm actually emulating that in a subtle way, purely with the experience of the art piece. So you see it, it's and you don't even notice that you're approaching it because it's just kind of there. And that also is the same feeling with a black hole. It's like, it's just there. But then as you get closer, you don't notice it. And then all of a sudden you get pulled right in and then it resets. Right. So I'm trying to blend behaviors that are in the universe, but also work with different scales and also have the feelings be represented in what could actually potentially happen, you know?
So someone has the opportunity to collect an interpretation of Jesse's dream.
Yeah. Yeah. If you think about it, absolutely. Man, that's cool. Yeah, 100%. And I've had it my entire life. It's very strange. I don't know why. It's just, what it does is it gives me the feeling again of that terrifying awe, you know?
And I think it tells us all that you were built for scientific exploration, right?
Honestly,
and then an expression through art.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, honestly, if I wasn't doing art, if I wasn't so captivated by like the emotional qualities of art and how I can communicate to other people, I would 100% be in the lab. I would be an obsessive scientist that does nothing other than look at planets and gravity and black holes and like maelstroms and turbulent flow and whatnot, you know? Like, it's amazing. So yeah.
It's such a beautiful thing though. You get to pull that out of the lab and then 100%. Present it.
Yeah, no, and I think honestly, man, I think scientists they're both magicians and superheroes, you know, like and for me, it's like I get a rush when I can figure out how to articulate these things through arts, because then it allows people to realize how amazing these discoveries truly are. Right? Like when I've had the ability to work with Cornell and like help with their exoplanet stuff and do small projects and whatnot, but just the ability of like, hey, I can help you do a small thing that will be in a planetarium to articulate what's going on to the science community. I'm like, yes, this is it. This is 100% what I love, you know? Yeah. So, and then the music is interesting. So I actually focused this time on purely an emotional quality because I wanted the music to articulate everything, but not be too embedded in kind of like, once again, like that abrasiveness. So it was more, I approached it from a sound design point where I looked at like, okay, I need to articulate two things: the weight of this thing and then the methodology behind the actual instrumentation I'm going to be using. So I actually used organs, pump organs, that purely use air and the flow of air, a very natural process. And if you think about it, by pushing air through an organ, it is conforming to the turbulent flow law. So you're making sound with the turbulence that is in the art piece. That's exactly what it is. And the beautiful thing about organs is that because of that, they have the sound quality is so intense. Of course, you know what an organ sounds like, especially if you've been in like a church and a cathedral, and it's just so intense when they have the massive pipes. So I have this musical piece that articulates the process of sound being created by these turbulent forces, but it has this really heavy emotional weight. So it's just a boom, you know, and it's not in a way that sounds like the trailer from Prometheus, where it's just horns and just blasts you in the face. It's elegant. It has that quality to it where it's capturing the terrifying awe without it being too intense, where you go like, it doesn't really feel like it's thorough. Like it needs to be, that terrifying awe needs to be almost like a subvertive thing where you feel it, but you don't pay too much attention to it. It's that emotional quality of it. So I'm excited for that. It's cool.
Back to your core juxtaposition, right? Your pleasure and pain, right? Can't have too much of one. Have to ground it and deliver.
Yeah, because it's, once again, man, I think I'm going to change the way I also talk about it based on what you said, where it's honest. That's 100% what I'm trying to do, man. Like, it's purely that honesty where I almost don't really want to, I don't really even, it's about the art. It's not about me, right? Like, it's about what I can do to represent what is amazing about the human experience and also the universal laws that are around us, you know. So.
Jesse, speaking of honesty, it's time to play a game.
Oh, here we go. The lightning round, my guy.
You knew the lightning round. So a couple words, a sentence, and if you get fired up and passionate, you want to call timeout and just launch onto something. This is an interview of tangents. I think tangents make origin stories, so don't shy away if the inspiration strikes you.
Okay, cool.
All right,
let's do it.
Here we go. Lightning round. Topic number 1. Start simple. NFTs.
Dimension, paintbrush, utility, opportunity, artists being able to redefine history, no external influence, sovereignty, community, obviously, just really like people banding together in around a really cool technology, where it's a way that the dangerous thing about technology is that it can really influence your perceptions of the world, of course. Like, I mean, I have a phone here, I'm talking to you, like this has changed my phone is my extension, right? But what I get about the NFT space right now is that it's a very genuine extension in a way that is about people. It's about connecting, it's about creating good art, it's about forging new opportunities, new businesses, new ways of understanding art, how it's perceived in time. All of these things are engaged in the NFTs space, which is once again long-winded answer, but that's what I find compelling, you know.
This man starts the lightning round on fire.
Dude, I mean, dude, I just, oh man, this stuff is amazing, man. I feel very grateful to be engaged in it, you know. So
Topic number 2, take it right into Ethereum.
Ethereum, less ambitious with this one in terms of my answer, but I think it's a beautiful way to engage a decentralized currency on the backpack of the potential to actually survive in really beautiful ways. Like the beautiful thing about Ethereum is that it has extremes. It's volatile, which is the beautiful thing and also the bad thing, right? But it gives people the opportunity to, to put it lightly, flip the table on the structure of the financial approach that you would typically take if you're an artist, right? So like my intentions were like, all right, I'm going to build installations and make art and then create B2B business as a way to survive through that. So I work with the brands, or I create an experience here, or I consult, or I compose for film, yada, yada, yada. But what I'm seeing now is that the 16-year-old, the 15-year-old can wake up and be like, hey, there's an actual pathway for me to just make art in its purest form. And if you look at art and you look at history, the things that really shaped and changed and influenced are usually the ones that were free and people died for their vision, right? And I think that's a beautiful thing, and that's a powerful thing. And I think Ethereum allows room for that, because it is, and that's honestly, to be honest as well, like that's a bit of a weird answer because it relates to Ethereum, but I kind of went on to a NFT tangent, to be honest. But no, a 15-year-old can make a reasonably chunk of money, and then that can fund art for 10 years if needed, you know. That's beautiful, beautiful thing that there's opportunity that way, you know.
We're going to create a show and we're going to call it Tangents by Jesse Woolston.
Yes, that's it.
I feel like there's magic in that show. There have been some powerful tangents so far.
Yeah, I mean, I really think a lot. Like I've thought my entire life. Like, multiple people have told me this, and I'm kind of like, it's a little uncomfortable, but they're like, hey, you're an old man in a young man's body. Like, it's like when I was like 13, I would love to talk to people that were like 2 to 3 times my age to understand like, what does it mean to be like you? Like, what is it like to live on this planet? What are you doing? Like all these things. I find that fascinating. So yeah, but that also comes with the fact that I'm a little all over the place sometimes, you know.
Got that life experience and wisdom early.
Yeah, man, exactly. Which is why I chose to be an artist. That's exactly what you do, right?
Yeah. All right, so let's go with this. Chronologically speaking, what's the literal last NFT artwork that made your jaw drop?
Yeah, I think this is a cool opportunity. Because what I love about art and what I really respect is I respect craft. I respect that people are really thinking about the art first and then everything else secondary, which is like, I understand that everything else is still engaged, but at the end of the day, it's just start with the reason why it exists, right? And I saw a piece by Carlo van de Roor, which is someone I recently met, who's actually another Kiwi that's out in Los Angeles here. And he works on blockbuster films, and he develops innovative lighting techniques and film techniques. And do you remember in Ragnarok, there was that Valkyrie flashback scene? It was all in slow motion, and it had this crazy light that was spinning around everybody's faces. Do you remember that? Maybe not.
I have not seen that particular Thor film. Yeah.
Yo, that's like one of our biggest Kiwi exports.
Uh-oh.
Like a TV, man. Oh, you gotta see it, dude.
I respect the brand. I respect, you know, those films in general. I just haven't seen that one.
That's fine. But anyway, so he developed a lighting technique that this guy is a madman, and I absolutely love it. Him and his team, where you can shoot something in slow motion within a set, right? but he has a lighting rig, and they have a lighting rig that spins around at 8 times the speed of sound.
Mhm.
Okay, so what that enables, the capturing to do is shoot super slow-mo, but have this beautiful dynamic practical lighting rig that flies around the space. And he put out an NFT. His first NFT was about that patented technology, and it was him throwing up some sand and this beautiful composition, this framing using geometry, and you see this lighting technique that's flying around. And to me, that's a beautiful thing where I'm like, that's craft, right? It's craft. Then it was adopted into blockbuster films, right? But now actually there's an opportunity for that technique and that practicality to be engaged in the NFT space, which is an absolutely incredible thing where you're like, someone that is doing that kind of thing has the ability to create an art piece with it. That was it for me. It was amazing.
All right, now I'm going to back my way into the film. So I'm going to ask you to please send me that, and then I'll use that as the jump off point to go actually watch the movie as well.
Yeah, you should, man. It's a good watch. Like I love the Thors and the blockbuster films because they're popcorn films, as in like you just enjoy yourself. But with Ragnarok, there's actually a lot of incredible techniques that were used, right? So there's an element there where it's like this is deeper than just what I would traditionally expect from a blockbuster. So yeah, I'll send you I'll send you the scene, and then I'll tell you to watch the film.
Perfect. Please do. All right, let's keep plowing on. Lightning round. All right.
Cool.
JN Silva.
All I think about is I just want to give him a hug, man. Like, and I think we all share that. Like, he's a beautiful person that doesn't care about the equation of if I do something for you, I expect something else. It's a genuine place of just trying to support and love artists and create opportunity for them, because I think he knows truly, as he's an artist, that it's not easy. We're all kind of a bit crazy for even thinking this is going to work out, and it has beautifully, and it has throughout history, which is amazing. But I think his ability to embrace with all his energy and love and might other people, to the point where I want him to mint more, because I see what he's done, and I would love him to continue to really allow us to love him back in a way. I think he's, and we also have like talks. I want to go to Greece with him and like go on holiday and look at the some amazing architecture and art and things like that. And we both love philosophy, so he's just awesome. So yeah.
And actually, speaking of minting more, there was one of his artworks, Vision y Razón, which was his original audio. You made me think of this. He made me think of you. Cool. His original audio overlaid to a photography montage, and I think it's one of those examples of the audio very clearly elevating for me the emotional journey of the piece. So yeah, you just clicked that in for me, so I had to share that back to you.
No, that's amazing, and I know he does the sound too. So it's like, yeah, I think it's beautiful when artists have the ability to do both. And I'm not, I am biased, obviously, but the reason is because of the fact that the unfortunate thing about the language that we have is that it's actually very difficult to convey complex ideas in simple forms. Like I'm talking to you right now and I'm using reasonably simple language, right? But like there's so much more complexity that goes into how we understand art, how we look at art, how we feel art. It's very hard to articulate. That's part of the reason why artists use art to communicate, because it's, you can't say things in words, so you say it with your emotion and your medium. Yeah. Right. And I think it's a beautiful thing when artists can do both, because what it does is it feels like the voice is coming through really purely. Right. So I love that he does his own music. So yeah, it's just you get the both sides, in the vision. So, yeah.
All right, lightning round moves to super rare.
Oh man, I mean, super rare. Bunch of hustlers in the best way. Like they're amazing, because what they're looking at is they're going like, all right, we have this opportunity to really build this space, but we also understand the grassroots component of being an artist, right? Where we're going to focus on 10 years as opposed to 6 months, right? And then having the ability to be hyper open, right? Like when I talked to this SR guys about my Genesis piece, and I was like, hey, I want the the starting price to be all of the sum of all of the wavelengths of color into Ethereum. So you're actually buying all the colors together. And it was like some absurd, like long, extension, because of course it's like Mises West. And they were like, all right, let me check with the engineers. And within like half an hour, they're like, all right, you can do this and this and this and it'll work. And I'm like, oh, like you care about this. It's amazing. You know what I mean? So I have had this experience where like they are open to realizing the vision that people have, and I think that's very beautiful because it feels very much so like we're colleagues. Or not, I think colleagues is not the right word. It's a symbiotic relationship where it's like they want to realize the vision and we want to focus on creating the best artwork we can, and we can work together in that aspect. So it's a very cool thing to experience. Yeah.
Let's go with some simple prompts, but let's see what tangents you go down. All right, ready?
All right, okay. I'll try to not just start running, but man, like it's hard not to.
The next word I'm going to throw at you is light.
Oh man, oh my goodness. That's actually harder, to be honest. Everything from perceptions, physiology, Caravaggio, Blade Runner, controlling light, using light, emotion, gravitas is a huge one. Lines, geometry, just the difference between if you use light in a real good way and an interesting way, something so small can feel like it's celestial. Right?
Okay, now go to color.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Color. Okay. Color is, of course, there's a light spectrum, but that's basic. I think color, everything from communicating emotion, communicating current status, communicating the fact that you can control color to make someone feel a certain way visually, and I guess audibly is kind of what I did with NFT. But the huge thing that pops up to me is if you look at film, the color palettes and the aesthetics convey the point of the film in the first place. You can have much more vibrant colors, and you can get something that's more playful. You can have desaturated colors, and you can get something that's more like serious and can be heavier. You have this dynamic of like very cold colors can give you a sense of emotional weight and this non-humanity. Warm colors, you get this vibrance, and you can feel like it's a hug. Like a perfect example of what I'm trying to articulate is what's fascinating about how people use color is that we're smart. People are smart. They know how to manipulate color to make you feel a certain way. There's a reason why, okay, in all scary films, if it's done right, they use desaturated colors for the monsters, because if you get these grays and blues and this dark palettes, we look at that and go, oh, that's dying, right? It's like it's not vibrant, it's not alive, it doesn't have the blood coursing through its veins like we're used to, right? Then by using color and shadow and how you frame that, you can convey these feelings and this interpretation, and you can be like, I want something to feel alien but organic, and then you embed the color palettes in nature, but you have something that is abstracted, so it doesn't feel like it's going to hurt you. It just has this grounding. That perfect example is Annihilation, is what I'm thinking about. Yeah, if you've seen that film.
I have. This one we can jam on. I like that. Yeah,
no, 100%. Like if you look at the alien at the end, by the way, I love that film because it looks at just purely the process of biology outside of this Independence Day alien kind of thing that we all love, right? But it also like looks at like self-destruction and like the psychology of these characters and yada yada. But if you look at that end alien when you experience it, and I'm not talking about the duplicate, the humanoid duplicate. I'm talking about when you get the Natalie Portman gets down into the location, the cave, whatever. When you experience it, you have this sense of warmth because of that vibrant yellow orange light. So it's kind of, you're like, this is more intriguing than it is disturbing. And then it has all this organic color palettes, and you have that in the center where you have that light, which yellows and oranges, and that feels more like, clearly that's warmth. It's the sun, right? Like it feels inviting. And then if you look at the actual body, it's based on fractals, which is an interesting within geometry and math, whatever. But you look at the colors and you see these like greens and things like that. So it feels like it's embedded in biological functions and things like that we experience in nature. So you have this kind of experience, right? Where you're like, this feels intriguing. And then what's beautiful about that is you can have music that conveys that emotional quality as well. And I think music is beautiful by way of being able to articulate that. Like one of my favorite directors is Denis Villeneuve, which of course, like he's now blown up because of Dune. and I haven't seen it
Yes.
because I want to see it on IMAX.
Oh, you're waiting. You're holding out.
Man, I need to. But I remember seeing Prisoners, which is a film by him back in 2013, and that's a very, very intense, heavy film. And it uses a lot of like blues and desaturated greens as a way to kind of convey the emotional weight of the story. But by extension of that, the composer, one of my favorite composers, Johan Johansson, he articulated that through sound, where like he used small ensemble and of course like orchestral components clearly, but he intentionally approached the music in a way that conveys that emotional context. So everything feels very cold. Like the way everything's played doesn't feel expressive. It feels very disconnected and very kind of intense. It's beautiful music, but it's just a technique, right? So it's that. Like I think about color as purely as an indicator, biological indicator, emotional feeling, and then also what it is in science, right? Like actually, what is it that we're experiencing? So all of these things are directions that I could easily go in. And what's interesting is that you understand color based on the context that it's in, which is fascinating. So even that, once again, this is crazy tangent, but even that idea is just all of these factors come into play when I see color or think about color, right?
Two more topics. 2021.
I think 2021 is a bittersweet uplift from the fact that we've been indoors for quite a while, you know? Oh, did I lose you again? Are you back?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It was a far shorter, but let's go again. Ready?
Thankfully, yeah. Well, no, I look at 2021 as a beautifully bittersweet uplift from the pandemic and the fact that everything was so intense for so long. And I finally feel that 2021, the biggest service it can create and convey is this ability to triumph and start to move out of that environment. You know, I think people are incredibly amazing at adapting, right? Like I've seen that. There's like, of course, it's a horrible thing. The pandemic was awful. But if I think of anything that's positive, I have seen so many people figure out new things. Whether like the most obvious example is I know so many people that have new businesses now, right? They're like, can't do this anymore. I'm gonna do this, and now they're prospering. And I'm like, that act is incredible to just see that being expressed. So I think 2021 is I lean more positive than anything, right? In comparison to 2020.
Yeah, I think it's well said. It's a big year of reinvention on a lot of fronts, and you know, still some struggle out there, but you're right. I can also point to a number of those instances of pure reinvention, and it's pretty inspiring when you focus on those cases. And now take it to 2022.
That's got to be fun. Yeah, I think it's I think it's beautiful. I think 2022 is going to be an incredible way to realize so many things that people have been thinking about during the pandemic. Right? Like I mean, I'll also add myself into that reinvention or whatever. Like I fully embrace what I need to be doing. Right? I've been doing it for a long time, but I fully embraced it when I had the opportunity to stop and think about it. And I think this next year is going to be an incredible example of when artists find something that is compelling and beautiful, a new medium, anything like that, that they really can kind of capitalize on and do some amazing things.
Yep.
You know, and I think it's gonna be a big year for me as well. Like I'm super excited. Like I can't wait for the moments where I get to look at somebody in the eyes and watch them go, whoa, that's it. Like, and I'll be able to do that in person again. It's gonna be amazing, you know. So like, yeah, no, I think it's gonna be pretty incredible, you know. And just watch, man, I love it when I see people that deserve to win as well. You know, like I think we're gonna see a lot of that. That's gonna be exciting for me. You know,
I agree. I like those two themes a lot. You can look across this space and even beyond it. You see, you know, that there are a lot of people about either having broken out and breaking out, you know, will break out, and then to loop in the physical world like you just did. We've seen hints of that in a number of these cities recently, but I think 2022, hopefully, knock on wood, you know, everything just keeps going in that direction, and you get to see this wonderful merger of these digital horizons that have now been explored and finding groundbreaking ways to take that back to the physical world.
Yeah, 100%. yeah, it's communicating the incredible things that now technology has afforded us, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's coming back to communication, which is an incredible thing to do that through art, Yeah.
Jesse Woolston, your NFT origin story. You've been patient.
Yes.
You were patient. You exploded onto the scene in the space. It's amazing seeing you have a second artwork out there, hearing about the depth, the tangents, and then what 2022 holds in store. I think, I'll say this, you don't have to, but I see you as one of those individuals who has broken out and is really just going in one direction from here on out. I can't wait. I was really anticipating your second artwork. I'll be anticipating your third and fourth and on down the line, man.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to just live in a way. And what I mean by that is I'm excited to, as I age and as I go through this life, figure these things out that are beautiful and then learn how to communicate them in a manner that makes other people light up. Like, I'm so stoked. Just that idea alone is literally right now, I'm getting super excited just thinking about it. Like, I feel as if I have finally found exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's been there the whole time, which is hilarious. So any other artists that have seen this, like, really embrace that and commit yourself fully. Like, go all in on it, which is like maybe not the best advice, but like, you always end up in a place that is better than what it was if you just really like commit to trying to realize that vision.
Yep.
I think it's gonna be exciting, and I'm happy to share it with you and of course the whole community. So
likewise, man. Stay honest too. I really, really enjoy that specific angle. I think it's a powerful one.
Yeah. No, I think something has to be said about protecting the art and protecting the point, because I've throughout my whole life in multiple capacities, once again, like, do one thing is obvious, but no, I've had many instances with people that were had authority, didn't say things that were very good in terms of how they saw the work and what I'm trying to do, right? So I think there's an element there that you, in a way, have to protect the point of the work in a very strange manner as a creator. And that sounds strange to say, but you really do. If you feel so compelled and you're on fire about something, you have to protect that. You really do.
Yeah.
So I'll try. If I ever don't, just be like, hey, what are you doing? I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. But no, I think I'll be right. I love this stuff. So yeah.
Jesse, where can people find you?
Social is obvious. You can type my name into Google and some random stuff pops up. But I'm mostly active on clearly Twitter for NFTs and Instagram. And I'm around, yeah. And I love art, I love artists, and I love what this means. So if anyone is interested, yeah, hit me up.
Hit him up, Jesse Woolston on Twitter, and don't forget about Super Rare as well. The current place to experience your NFT artwork.
That's a good point. I didn't ever think I should probably just say where the NFTs are. Like, thank you, man. That was a good assist.
Jesse, been a pleasure, man. See you next year. See you next year for a subsequent milestone origin story. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, sounds great, man. All right, we'll see you later.